is my fiction novel that is in the process of publication. Once they send me the updated and corrected page proofs and I approve them, it'll be 2 weeks until the book comes out in paperback and ebook format. They've been taking what feels like forever formatting the page proofs though. Anyway, we'll pick up reading in chapter 15 after her hallucination Perra convinced Cassie that she had to starve herself down to a preschooler's weight. She lost so much weight and got so malnourished from not eating anything that she became near critical. Dr. Kimmons put Cassie back in the Partial Hospitalization Program to work on starting to eat again, and also so that the nurse Nina can feed her through her newly placed NG feeding tube. So we will pick up reading here. I just want to wait a moment for people to kind of sign on and join us. Right now, we don't really have anyone signed on. So I'm just going to give it a minute and let people come and join me. Hopefully some more people will come on. So let's give it a minute. Vivian, hi Vivian. All right, we've got people on. We've got people watching. This is good. This is really good. All right, so I'm going to start reading now from the beginning of chapter 15. When I got to the Partial Hospital, I got a lot of stares because of the funny tube snaking out my nose. I was partly embarrassed, but a little tiny part of me was proud of myself for doing such a good job and listening to Perra, even in the face of the painful tube. I knew that part of me wasn't right, though, and I tried to pretend it wasn't there, but I could feel it whispering its insanity into my ears. The other kids in my group asked me a lot of questions about what the tube felt like and if I cried when they put it in. I didn't mind the questions. I kind of liked getting attention for once, even if talking to people made me nervous. But staff told them to leave me alone. I went to all the groups like normal, but my throat hurt really badly, and I couldn't swallow right at all. So I had all this saliva building up in my mouth. I kept trying to force myself to swallow, and it kind of hurt as it made the tube rub against my throat in an uncomfortable way. It also made the side of my nose that it was placed in run continuously, like a little faucet. Every once in a while, it would hurt so much that a stray tear would slide down my cheek. I would wipe it away really fast, though, before Perra had a chance to see it. At lunch, Nina called me to come with her. I didn't know where we were going, but I just followed her down the hall. She took me to the treatment room and had me sit down in a chair. Then she pulled out a can of tube feed, and I could feel panic pooling inside of me. Nina began to pour the tube feed into a large syringe. Then she hooked the syringe up to the end of my NG tube. Perra began screeching and hollering for me to get the tube feed away from my precious body that was so close to becoming completely pure. I tried to pull the tube away from Nina. I tried to push her syringe full of nutritional supplement away. You need to stop that and let me put this in your NG tube. Nina's voice cut into me. It was so sharp. The tears began to free fall down my face. I loved Nina and didn't want her to be mad at me. All I wanted was to apologize and just let her pour the tube feed into the tube. But Perra was still going nuts in my ear. I felt like I had no choice. I continued to use my weakened arms to try and shove my favorite nurse away. Nina wrestled my arms down in front of me. Then, holding them in a firm grip, she injected the entire syringe into my NG tube. When snack time came around, she had another staff come in with her and hold my arms down as she administered the tube feed. If you don't let us put the tube feed in your tube, then we might have to have you admitted to the hospital where they can put you in restraints while they put it in. If you don't want to end up tied down to a hospital bed, then you need to let us give you this tube feed, Nina told me. Her tone was sharp and had a bite to it. Perra was calling me a failure. I cried the whole time I was in the treatment room, and then for a while when I went back to groups. Perra was calling me a failure. I cried. The other kids asked me what was wrong, but I was too upset to even be able to find words for the way I felt. And anyway, I wasn't exactly in the habit of opening up to people. Terrified of getting sent to an inpatient unit, I was a little shaky when my mom came to pick me up. I noticed her eyes kept straying to the tube in my nose, and then refocusing on something else. I wondered if the tube brought up bad memories for her, too. As my mom and I were pulling into the driveway, Anne spotted me. I immediately looked away from the window so that she wouldn't see the tube in my nose and know how far backward I'd slipped. I wanted my best friends to think of me as strong and smart and fun-loving, and not like someone who was sick and mentally unstable. I was scared that they might stop being my friends if they knew how bad my problems could get. I wanted to protect them from that side of me. I quickly got out of the car and ran into the house. I knew Anne had seen me, though, and I just prayed she hadn't seen the tube protruding from my nose. Hi, Faith. Nice to see you here. That night was hard. I was so scared that I would gain the weight back from the NG tube feedings, and that Perra would be so angry that she'd somehow punish me. I decided to go up to my room and exercise so I could burn some of the calories off. I knew that Dr. Timmons had told me I had to be on bed rest when I was home, but I had to make sure I wouldn't be doing something that would terribly upset Perra. In the midst of hundreds of sit-ups, a bunch of push-ups, and some running in place, I sweated the tape off my cheek. I went into the bathroom and tried to stick the tape that was holding the tube in place back on my face. I thought I had fixed it, but I was in the middle of my 151st jumping jack when I felt the tube come halfway out. I just stood there frozen for a moment, knowing I was in big trouble. Then things got worse. I sneezed violently several times, and the whole length of tubing slid out, leaving just a few drops of blood dribbling out my nose. Horrified, I shut my eyes and tried to convince myself that nothing had happened. But when I opened my eyes again, the tube was still in my hand, not in my body. Telling my parents did not go over too well. They kept telling me that they didn't believe me, that I hadn't just pulled the tube out myself. I kept telling them that it had just come out. I even explained about the exercising. They still didn't believe me. I started crying for the millionth time that day, because there's something painfully invalidating about telling the truth and not having anyone believe it. Oh no, guys, hang on one second. Jamie? Jamie?
Yeah?
I dropped the paper. Sorry, guys, I dropped one of my papers. Hold on. I can't bend over in my wheelchair to pick stuff up because I'd fall out of my wheelchair and I don't have enough strength to lean forward. My mom put the tubing in a plastic bag. You have another appointment with Dr. Timmons tomorrow anyway. She'll have to go put the tube back in for you. I cried harder at the thought of going through the torture of getting the tube put in all over again. By the time I went to sleep that night, my head ached from crying so much. But I have to say, in spite of it all, I was pretty relieved that the tube was out. I promised Dr. Timmons that I'd start eating again. I figured that Perra would punish me either way, so I might as well avoid all the pain and discomfort of the tube. Dr. Timmons said that she would talk to Nina after lunch, And if Nina said I ate enough at Partial, then she would leave the tube out. But if I didn't eat enough at Partial, the tube would go right back in. I nodded and agreed to the terms. At lunch, I drank the entire can of Boost. Everyone, even the other kids, were congratulating me and telling me how proud they were of me. I just nodded and tried not to think about the food that I had just consumed. But then, all of a sudden, everything got really foggy looking. I could hear hundreds of whispered voices. Then I felt a cold chill rising up down my spine. It was like someone had dripped ice water directly into my veins. I couldn't see anything clearly. Things were slowly getting darker and darker. I could feel my breathing speeding up to 100 miles an hour. There was a feeling of hands touching me all over. I could feel the fingers. They felt dead to me, dead and cold, just like the chill. Then, just as quickly as it had started, it was over. My vision cleared. My body felt like its normal temperature again. And I could breathe normally. I looked around. No one had even noticed what had happened. No one except for me. How typical. I went through the rest of the day, terrified, but trying to act normal. How typical. I continued trying to eat normally for the rest of my stay at the Partial program, and I didn't get that weird cold feeling again. I called Anne and apologized for avoiding her the other day. I hadn't meant to explain, but the whole story about Dr. Timmons and the NG tube came pouring out. My lips were getting looser, and I wasn't sure what that meant for me. It kind of scared me a little. It used to be so much easier to keep secrets. Anne and Christine were really understanding, though. The next time they came over, they each gave me a big hug. I hugged them back. My family didn't hug much. When they did, they were quick, touch bodies and then push away kind of hugs. Anne and Christine gave big, warm, I really care about you and want to be near you hugs. I liked their hugs. I could feel the unconditional acceptance radiating off them. My first overdose occurred about a month and a half after I was discharged from the Partial Hospital. I took the rest of my Paxil bottle that I'd found lying on the counter. I had just seen them there, sitting there, and the excited whispers of the others drew me over to them. Sandra would later say I wanted attention. My parents would later say it was a cry for help. Anne and Christine just accepted that it was something I did sometimes. 1,000 voices whispered to me that I needed to take them. They said that if one Paxil pill wasn't enough to make me happy, then surely the rest of the bottle would make me super happy. I swallowed the rest of the bottle with swigs of Tropicana orange juice straight from the jug. I waited about 15 minutes, and then, when I started to feel a little dizzy and tipsy, I found my mom. I need to tell you something. Please don't get mad at me. What is it, Cassie? My mom's face was wrinkled with worry lines. I think she thought I'd cut myself or something. I swallowed hard, but the lump in my throat was still there. I contemplated just telling her, never mind, but I didn't know how much damage the Paxil tablets could do to my small, underweight body. And even though I hated my life at that moment in time, I really didn't want to die. Staring at a particular tile on the linoleum floor in our kitchen, I blurted out what I had done. My mom's eyes got squinty and sad looking. She went over to the phone and called Poison Control. Poison Control said that I needed to go to the hospital. My mom curtly told me to get my shoes on and to get in the car with her. As I climbed in next to my mom, neither my mom or I said a word the whole drive to the hospital. Once we arrived at the hospital, my mom led me to triage. The nurse there had me step behind a curtain and stand on a scale. Then she took my blood pressure and pulse and oxygen levels and sent us to the pediatric waiting room. I colored in a picture of Elsa from a coloring book on the table, and then sat on a chair next to my mom and swung my legs very impatiently. My mom was still silent, so I kept my mouth shut too. And that is the end of chapter 15 of Was I Ever Normal? So, with that, hang on, guys. So that's chapter 15. Next time, I'll read chapter 16. We'll find out what happened in the emergency room, how they treated Cassie, and what they did to protect her from the overdose, and what happened next. I hope you guys turn up for chapter 16. I also hope you guys can buy the book once it comes out. It should be coming out sometime in March. Like I said, I filled out the last set of page proofs, and I did the corrections for the last set of page proofs. Mailed it back into the publishing company earlier this week. So now they just have to make the corrections and send me the corrected page proofs. If I approve them, then it's 2 weeks until the book is released in bookstores, on the phone, and then in other formats. So that's the story. All right. Thanks, guys. Nice seeing you here. Take care. Bye.